Hi everyone, join me today as we paint this Easter rabbit in ink and watercolor. For today's sketch I'm going to use this Stillman and Birn Beta Series sketchbook. It contains 270 GSM mixed media paper, and I find that perfectly suitable for a sketch that involves not too many layers. I'm going to start with my sketch already inked onto the page. You can find the link to the free traceable sketch reference for this if you have a look at the link in the description box below. For the ink work I used a Pigma Micron permanent liner pen in a size 02. I used a very light hand as I didn't want the lines too solid. And I used slightly thicker lines in areas where I wanted to do a little bit of shading, like underneath the hat and inside the ear. I will spray my paints to activate them. Then I'm going to start with some raw sienna. I want to make it a really watery consistency, just so that I can get a base color down. So I'm going to water that down a lot and then add it to the outside of the ears. On this ear I'm going to do the inside slightly pink, so I'm just doing the outside of the ear and just at the very top. And basically I'll just put some water down on the inside so that I can add a bit more. I'm going to mix up some yellow ochre just so that we can get a slightly different color in here, and I'm going to drop that around the edge and then a bit up the middle and then around the side of that ear. I'm just blending with water here just so that I don't get a hard edge to the color that I've already put down. Now I'm going to take a bit of burnt umber, and I'm just looking for a slightly different and darker color. I'll put that up the middle and then down at the bottom edge here. And then I'm going to just rinse and dry off my brush and do some blending of the colors. I want it slightly darker in the middle, smoothing out to a lighter color at the edge. I'm going to take that very watered down raw sienna and put it down on the rabbit's face first. Very watery, just so that I've got a base down that I can drop more color into. Now that that's down, I'll take the yellow ochre in a slightly thicker consistency. And I'm going to drop it in down here on the forehead and under the hat. Then I'm going to take that burnt umber and put it up the bridge of the nose and under the hat. And because that ear is still a little bit wet, I'm going to drop some up the middle just for a bit of contrast. And then down at the bottom of the neck. I'm taking that burnt umber in a slightly thicker consistency. I'll do the tip of the nose and the mouth, and then just a bit more in this shadow area here and under the hat. Just putting in a bit where there is going to be darker shadow area. I'm going to take that raw sienna now in its very watery consistency and do the paws. And then I'll take the raw sienna in a slightly thicker consistency and then start dropping it into the darker areas at the bottom and at the back. Now I'm going to take that yellow ochre and I'm increasing the thickness and consistency again, dropping that in the darker shadow areas. And then my burnt umber, also a slightly thicker consistency now, just building on the colors that I've already put down, trying to increase that contrast. I'll slowly just build and add the colors until I've got the shade that I'm looking for. Now I'm going to mix some buff titanium with Quinacridone Rose. I'm looking for a muted pink color to do on the inside of the ear here. I don't want it to stand out too much, which is why I've added the buff titanium to it. But I'm going to do a pink base on the inside of the ear. And then once that's down, take that same color in a slightly thicker consistency and drop it in at the bottom. Now I'm going to let this layer dry. I'm going to work on the hat now, and to do that I'm going to work with a base of Naples Yellow. I'm just going to water that down and cover the whole area of the hat with that watery color. Once that's down, I'll just get the Naples Yellow in a thicker consistency and put it around the back and underneath the brim of the hat. I want to work on the apron now, and I'm wanting a muted color once again. So I'm working together my buff titanium and Potter's pink, and I'm just looking for a very muted pink color, which I will drop in over the whole of the apron and the strings attaching it. I'll just add a little bit of Potter's pink to that and drop it into the area on the apron where I think there's a bit of shadow. Let me work on the egg now, and I'll just take raw umber in a watery consistency, and I'm going to put it over the whole surface of the egg. I'll worry about doing shadow for it later. I want to do some shadow on the white tail now. I'm going to work wet and wet, so I'll put some water down first. And I think for my shadow color I'm going to use Moonglow. Moonglow granulates into some beautiful colors which are very nice for shadow work. So I'm going to get that Moonglow in a very weak consistency and just drop it in on the base and the left of the tail. And now I'm just going to let that all dry. Now for my bunny's dress, I want an off-white base color. So I'm going to put water down first, and then I think I'm just going to use a very light consistency mix of that same Potter's pink and buff titanium mix that I've already got made. I'm just using this as a base color on her dress because I want to do some flower prints on the dress once it's all dry. So I'm just going to dot that in, giving it a bit of texture. And I want to mix up a shadow color for the back of the dress. So I'm going to add some Potter's pink, and then I think a bit of Moonglow to that mix that's already there. And I'm going to dot it in for the shadow. So I'll dot it in around the back, and then underneath the apron and the tie. I want to work on her bow on her hat now, so I'm going to just take plain Potter's pink and cover the whole area of the bow in that color, and I'll worry about shadow in an additional layer. I'm going to take some burnt umber now and do the main body of the eye in that color. Not too dark, as I want the hazel color of the eye to show through. I'm going to let that all dry now. Now for the egg wrapping, you can use any color you like. I'm just going to, again, I'm working with the vintage theme, so I'm just going to add some phthalo turquoise to the color that I've already got there to get a bluish color, and I'll paint the whole wrapping in that color. I'll just take a little bit more of the phthalo turquoise, add it in a thicker consistency, and try and get a little bit of a shadow around the back. I'll just rinse and dry off my brush. I'll do a little bit of lifting of the color where it folds over. And now I'm going to do my first layer on the ground. I'm going to do work wet and wet. So I'm going to put some water down first. I'll just put water all around her feet and extend it outwards a little bit. I'm going to start by just using the colors I've got on my palette that remain. So I'm going to work through the browns, just start around the base and then allow the color to blend outwards. I'm going to take some raw umber now, add it into the mix that I've got there and try and increase the consistency a little bit, and I'll put that around the very base where there might be a little bit of shadow. I'll use my brush to blend this out into the water that's already there. I want to add a bit more shadow effect, so I'm going to take that raw umber in a thicker consistency and drop it in about around the base of the rabbit again. And now I'm going to let that dry completely. Now for the fun part. I'm going to use my watercolor pencils to add some dimension and contrast to this painting. What I really enjoy about watercolor pencils is that you can be really accurate with where you put the color down, and then they just enrich into such a bold color when you add water to them. I like them for areas where I want to put little bits of accents because you can be so accurate with the color that you put down. If you haven't got watercolor pencils, then you can have a look at what I do with the watercolor pencils and where I add the extra value. And you could either do that with plain pencil crowns, or you could do it with an additional watercolor layer. It is entirely up to you. So just enjoy the process with whatever method you choose to add some contrast to your painting from here. I'll list the sort of color names of the pencil crowns that I use, but the names are not specific. It's just colors that complement the colors that are already down there. So I'm going to work through the sketch bit by bit and just add some contrast colors wherever I feel that it needs it. I've got to keep in mind as I work with the pencil crown that when I add the water down, the value of the pencil crown is going to get a lot darker. So I'm going to work lightly in places if I don't want the shadow color that I'm putting down to get too dark when I put the water on a little bit later. I would like to ask at this stage, if you are enjoying this video and gaining value from it, I would really appreciate it if you would click the like button below. This really does help to grow my YouTube channel, and it gives me a good idea that you are enjoying the content that I'm producing. Even better still would be if you had to put a comment in the comment box below and let me know what you think. If you have clicked the like button, I'd like to say thank you. So I'm just going to keep working through my sketch, adding my watercolor pencils, and I'll come back to you at the point where I'm going to add water on top of my pencils. So now it's time to add water to activate the watercolor pencils that I have put down. My technique for activating the color is to wet and then tap off my brush. I don't want to be adding water to my painting at this stage. I just want to put enough water that the pencil crown becomes activated. And I'll always work from light to dark. So when I've got, for example, color down the center of the ear, I'll put my brush down on the outside first and then slowly wiggle and work my way towards the center. If you work from dark to light, so you put your brush down into the darkest area first and then you drag it outwards, I find that inevitably what then happens is the darker pencil crown color ends up spreading over your whole area, including the area that you are trying to keep light. So I will always start from light and almost push the color back towards where it's darkest in order to activate it. So I'm going to go through carefully with a damp but not wet brush and slowly but surely go ahead and activate all of the watercolor pencil that I have put down in the previous layer. If you are thoroughly enjoying this tutorial, it would mean the world to me if you made a donation to me on my Buy Me a Coffee platform. You can donate as little or as much as you want, and I appreciate any and all donations. If you have made a donation, you're an absolute rock star, and thank you. Now for some final embellishments. I'm going to use a Uniball Signo white gel pen to do some accents on the eyes. I've just got to get it working. I like to run it across some paper just to make sure the ink is flowing first. And then I'm just going to put some white dots on the eyes, which I think really make it look like it's catching the light and bring the eye to life. Then I've got a silver gel pen that I'm going to put some accents on the foil covering. So I think I'm going to put some dots on the egg. And then I'm going to put the silver on the foil that is folded over. I think that really makes the tinfoil covering of the egg pop. And I think that's it. And there's my final sketch. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please hit that like button. And until next time, bye for now.